Hello, everyone. Let's see if there's still some people coming in. Please join us. Right. Welcome to the Spring Debugger session. I already mentioned it this morning. I'm Marco, by the way, from JetBrains. I think it's one of the most exciting feature releases that are happening in IntelliJ IDEA at the moment. You'll be able to try everything out that I'm about to show you. And it's going to be a roughly 45-minute live coding session. I just want to lead into the session with a tiny anecdote. Before I was working for JetBrains, I was essentially full-time consulting many different projects, stacks, clients. And as some of you might know, then you have new projects, new domains, new stacks, on top of, let's say, Spring's magic, on top of what people call Hibernate's magic. And I was in a project with a colleague of mine, who I now still work with at JetBrains, and there was an issue. I don't know, I tried to set a property and it got overridden, and I didn't really feel like kind of debugging where that property, the real property value now comes from. And I turned to Andreas and said, Andreas, where do I have to click? I just want a simple button. I click the button, I get the answer, and that's it. And Andreas looked at me and said, well, don't be stupid, just try to debug it, find out. But it has become kind of a meme that where do I have to click? Whenever I saw something where I thought, hey, I just want a simple answer, I continued asking that question. And in the IntelliJ Spring team, we kind of took that meme as we wanted to give you very simple answers to complex questions in your Spring Boot application. And in that talk, we're trying to answer, hey, where do I have to click to find out the good stuff about your Spring application? That being said, imagine the scenario is I don't want to work at JetBrains anymore. I want to work at a new AI startup. It's my first day at the new job. And what happens on the first day is you get a ticket, in this case a U-Track ticket. A colleague told me, hey, please work through these 9 items on that list here. And that's what we're going to do. Just a tiny quick check. At the back, do you see anything at all? Can I just get a quick yes? Okay, cool, because I can't zoom in too much more anymore, otherwise, yeah. But good. If that's not the case, please just let me know. And all we're going to do is we're going to work through these items and see Spring Debugger along the way. Now, let me just start. Well, welcome to a rocket startup. That sounds good. Your account name is Marbeel. Well, I don't know what to do with that information now, but it told me step number 2, clone a repository, which I already did, just to make things a bit simpler. And I wanted to give you a quick look at what is the repository we're going to be working with. It's a very simple Spring Boot application. Maven-based. When we look at the POM XML file, you see that it has a starter web. It has Thymeleaf. It's HTML-based. It's just a customer success backend. A bit of Spring Data JPA, so nothing too exciting. When we look at how the project is built, good old layering. So we have a controller package, a model package, repository package. Again, just a pretty normal standard Spring Boot application. That sounds good. Check mark. Step number 3, run it with profile dev. Open localhost 8080 to see if it worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click the run button. I'm going to wait a second. And just so you see I'm not playing tricks on you, I put active profiles dev in here already as well. So it should start up in dev mode. Let's have a look at what happened. Right, so I have my HTML page. It says, welcome to my next AI startup, good. Account name seems to be undefined. Let's see what that means. Your display name says acceptance test. That looks kind of weird. We have an add random customer button, and we have a customer list, right? Where we see all the customers our vibe-coded startup has. Right, looks good so far. Step number 4, make sure that account name on that HTML page shows Marbeel. Add a properties file. I like these short abbreviated, someone just a bullet points, put something there, just make sure that it shows Marbeel. Add a properties file to see, to make it work. All right, so I might be tempted to go back now into my project and just briefly have a look at, there's just one index.html file. And I can see that here my account name is being put into the template. I'm just going to work my way up here. I can see that it's being put into the model here of the page. And when I look at the account name, just once more, I can see that it's a property which is being put in, right? So application properties does have no account name. Application dev has developer.account, right? That looks good. Application test and prod, I think I can ignore them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a new properties file. I'm going to call it application Marco dot properties. Right, give me a second. I'm already kind of zoomed in. Let me just see. Zoomed in, 175. Let's see. Did that work? Kind of. I have 200%, but then it's going to be tricky. So let's see. Let's see. We have developer account, Marbil, right? Then I'm just going to go to edit configurations. I'm going to put my new profile here, dev Marco. I'm going to run it. And then I think I'm going to be done. Actually, very simple. Hopefully, let's see if it boots up. Right, application boots up. At the top, it says 2 profiles are active, Dev and Marco. So I think I'm going to be safe. Going to go back here, right? Refreshing the page, it still says undefined. Where do I have to click? What do I need to do now? Because I remember there's like 15 different property sources that Spring tries to get properties from. I'm pretty sure the profile is being loaded correctly, as you saw. Why does it still say undefined and not my account name? Does anyone, what would you do? Anyone have any, what you now would do to figure out where the property comes from? Sorry? Start the debugger. Right, right, that's one way, okay. Start the debugger. Good luck. Let's see what happens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the debugger. So I just press the debug button. Let's wait a second. And you immediately see something here on the left side in the project view panel. We're trying to be smart and trying to figure out what your application does at all times. One of these things is we figured out, hey, these 3 properties files here are being loaded from your application context. They're highlighted. They have a green bubble. Prod and test are not being used. Hence, we grayed them out. We disabled them. Even more so, we said, hey, when you open up application dev properties, for example, application Marco properties, you can see that I put Marbil here. But hopefully, you can see at the back here, we have an inline which says value undefined. So you actually see the value that we're seeing on the screen. Even better, what we can do is we can click the link and being brought to wherever the value is being defined. So let's do it. And I was a bit sneaky here for that demo, is I have a first-day prank processor. So my colleagues put in some prank processor, which essentially, once the application boots up, it adds one property source, where it says developer account is string builder undefined reversed. I was trying to be smart because I thought someone is going to suggest, hey, just search for undefined across your project. So I just quickly reversed it. No one did, because that would have worked. But the point is, it doesn't matter where the property comes from. It could be a system property, environment variable. It could be from a config server, where we just will point you to the right URL of your config server. We will bring you to the right point where the actual property comes from, just with a click, and you don't have to do anything. You just open up your properties file, you can navigate to it, and you're all good. I'm going to comment out quickly that first-day prank processor, right? We're going to reboot the application, and then hopefully everything works as expected. And then we're going to show you something else. Here we go. Right. So it says Marbil, which is fine. task checked off. We thought, let's take it a bit further. Let's not just stop at visualization. When I go to, for example, my home controller, it doesn't matter, anywhere where you want to debug something and you want to have information about your properties, then what do? So I'm just in my home controller method now, in the home method, and I want to hit the breakpoint, right? So I'm here. Then we thought, what else could we give developers? When you look at the debug panel down here, you might have noticed that on the right side it says Java. And you can also choose, there's a new setting which says choose Spring properties. And when you enable that setting, you can basically access any property that your Spring project has. It doesn't matter if it's your own properties, some libraries, any property that's in the application context. So, and you have auto-completion. So for example, spring.kafka admin.autocreate. I just hit enter, I see the value here, result equals true. Even though we don't have it, enabled, but that's the auto configuration. If I look at, I don't know, my developer account name, I can see, hey, it's being set to Marbil. Even more so, you don't just see the property, but you can actually see, again, where did the property come from? What's the source? Where was it defined? You have to hit a little detect button link here because we lazy load these sources. And then you can see right here, well, the source is actually application Marco properties. And you can navigate to it all in one place. So you just stay in your editor all the time, in your debug panel. If you just want to quickly access any property you like, you can access it without having to switch context. At the moment, it's only read-only. I would be super happy, so I've been talking with the colleagues, if I could just do developer.account equals something else. And then reload beans, for example. It is something I would like to see done, but it's not done yet. So at the moment, read-only, but maybe potentially if you're all saying, yes, we want to have the automated reloading, then we'll put some work into figuring that out as well. All right, let me just quickly double check what we had so far. We said make sure that account name shows Marbil. That works. Can I just get a quick kind of, temperature feeling of property support? Is that nice? What do you think? What do you all think? Just a quick show of hands, kind of, yeah? Okay. Wow. That was too much for the sign. Cool. Then let's continue. Make sure that display name, it's the next task I have, shows Marco Behler, check display name resolvers. Interesting. I'm going to go back to my application. We're going to do the same thing. So we're going to start with a template. I see here in my template there's a display name variable that I'm setting. It's being set to my model. Display name resolver.resolve display name. Right? And when I look at the display name resolver, it's an interface. And again, my colleagues vibe coded a bit too much. There's, 12 different implementations of the interface. And now I'm looking at them, and I can see that some of them, like Active Directory, display name resolver, profile windows, cache display name resolver, profile performance. So there seems to be, depending on the annotation, a resolver gets active. Right. Again, where do I find out? Where do I have to click to find out which of these beans is active? Which is loaded, which isn't loaded? What do I need to do? Apart from clicking the debug button. What would you do? Anyone, any suggestions? What do you now, how you would approach it to find out? Mm-hmm. Well, let's try it out. Let's try out with the debug button again. I'm booting up in debug mode. And maybe when you think of the properties, you might already expect something, right? Again, we're trying to be smart here. You can see all of these beans are grayed out because they haven't been loaded by your application context. So just grayed out. The active ones are printed like normally. And even here inside, you can't see it properly here on the screen, but even here on the tab, for example, we show you that this is actually grayed out, so it's not being loaded at the moment. The active ones, debug display name resolver, mock display name resolver, right? It says primary here, which is probably a bug. I'm going to take it out. And then I'm just going to simple display name resolver, right? That looks good. I'm just going to put the primary annotation here. And then hopefully that will just work. So again, I'm just going to restart my application. And maybe we have fixed the problem already of the display names. Let's see. Right, I'm just going to mute the breakpoint here. Right, looks good. Marbil and Marco Bill are my name. Looks good. Now again, the story is we didn't just want to stop with visualization, but we thought, hey, we actually know everything about your project. We could show you much, much more in the debug window panel about your beans and maybe some other funky features. So let me just go ahead and maybe into a service class, into the customer service somewhere. I'm just going to put a breakpoint. Let me just quickly see, get all customers, right? Make sure it's not muted. Go back, hit the breakpoint. First off, what can you see? In the debugger tool panel, what we're trying to make sure is to not just show you normal variables and objects and whatever. You can see there's now Spring Bean icons. We can see that the customer service is actually a Spring Bean. You have metadata about the definition, meaning what's the scope, what's the profile it's active for, where is it injected into, which beans does it depend on. Again, it's all inside just the debugger panel, and you don't have to switch context to find all of that out. You can click navigate, and it brings you to, hey, where was that being defined? Which in case of customer service is a bit pointless, because there's just a service annotation here at the top, but you get the idea. And when, for example, I have the method down here somewhere is calling a helper class, customer helper. And now if I wanted to find out, hey, where does my custom helper get defined, for example, I could open it up. I could see there's no real annotation here. Maybe it's a factory method somewhere. Or you're just in place here, debugger panel, helper. You say, hey, navigate me to where the bean has been defined. In this case, it's a legacy XML context. Again, I just put it in to show you that, again, we're trying to trace every place inside your application where the bean actually comes from without you having to do anything, just click a tiny button. Meta information is nice, but then we thought, hey, you've seen the property support here. Why not give you access to any bean your application consists of? It doesn't have to be in your class, it doesn't have to be injected, but we know the application context. We could just give you access to the application context and to any bean that's inside it. And that's what we did. Again, you have auto-completion, so you could just start writing. I don't know, if you wanted to access one of the many configuration classes that Spring consists of, or even my home controller here, so you can access home controller, all the properties inside, all the methods, doesn't matter if they're private or whatever, you can just access them. A potentially more useful feature would be, hey, let's have access to Entity Manager directly. I could say, hey, I want to create a query here, so from customer, let's see, get result list, and I can just execute that. I don't have to be injected. I can just, anywhere that bean lives in the application context, I have access to it. Right, we get 4 customers back. And then our developers went a bit crazy, because I found that down here it's already quite nice to be able to evaluate any bean, but when you look, for example, at breakpoint conditions, like this one, so you want to say, hey, only hit the breakpoint if some condition is true. I could just evaluate my bean inside here and say, hey, I only want the breakpoint to hit if I have 3 customers in my database. So if I'm not mistaken, I have 4 customers in my database, so the breakpoint doesn't hit, just to show you. So I'm just repeatedly clicking and refreshing the page. But if I change the condition on my customer service to 4 customers inside here, it should hit. Just to show you that we really do evaluate it any way you like. Right, and now the breakpoint hits. So you can evaluate beans in the panel with Alt F8. When you evaluate expressions as breakpoint conditions, doesn't matter. You have access to them everywhere. Right, then let's have a look back at our ticket list. It says, make sure the display image shows Marco Behler, check display resolvers, solved, great. Quick show of hands, who thinks that the bean evaluation is quite nice and quite handy? Right, cool to see. Let's continue, it's working well. I think they're not gonna terminate me after my first day. Fix broken add random customer, please. So, there is an add random customer button. I click it, and what happens, hopefully you can see there's a spinning wheel here on top. So nothing gets inserted into the database. And just as a tiny background check, whenever there's something like that is happening, I'm thinking it might be some sort of a timeout, some sort of a database locking transaction problem along those lines. And we need to figure out, hey, what specifically is the problem? Again, I'm just going to repeat what I've did previously, so I might just have a look at the template. Look at the question. There's a form that we clicked. Just navigate quickly to the method. It says, unfortunately, transaction level 1 service start transaction chain, which does sound a bit scary, to be honest. When looking at the service customer package, again, I can see there's my customer service here, but there's also 7 different vibe-coded classes inside. They have transactional, spawning different types of transactions. And that is a bit fabricated, obviously, for that example, but in real life, I've seen much worse. Much worse. Many different nested levels of transactions. So what I might be tempted to do is, I might just go inside here, inside customer service, put a breakpoint, and let's see what happens. And I took away the answer to where do I have to click myself already, because by now, just hit the debug button, and magic is going to happen. Right, so we broke in create random customer, and let's have a look what happened inside the panel. When we detect a transaction that is currently running, we just put it inside the debug panel for you. So here you can see it. You have the metadata. Is it read-only? No, it's false. Default isolation level required, which means you have to open it up or take part in an existing one. You even see the L1 entity cache. I'll show you that in a second. But even more so, you have a link where you see, hey, that transaction, we're currently in customer service, wherever that is, but the transaction actually started at one specific point. And that one specific point is transaction level 1 service with the start transaction chain method. When you click to navigate source, you're being brought back straight to where that transaction originally came from. It doesn't matter how many transactional annotations were in between. This was the method which originally opened up the transaction. Quite nice, right? So let's see what happened, because deadlock and maybe 2 transactions competing for the same customer, right? I just clicked resume, and we're hitting the breakpoint again, which means some other place calls the same method create customer. This time it's a bit different. When you look at the transaction, without even looking at the code, just at the transaction down below, you can see there's a new transaction which started, transaction level 5, unfortunately. We can see propagation behavior requires new, so it opens up a new database transaction. It supposedly also tries to save the same customer into the database because we broke in the customer service method. And that could be the culprit. When I navigate to source, I can see, hey, the source, right? So this is really the culprit, so that someone put requires new on that method. But not only the source for this transaction, we can also logically see what was the parent transaction, so level 1, where this new transaction branched off. Again, all that information is just in the debug panel. What I'm going to do to fix it is I'm just going to remove quickly the requires new. And then I know also somewhere in here I put the second create customer call. I'm just going to disable it, and then let's see what happens when we rerun the application, if that already fixed the code. Taking a second. Let's go back. Right, add random customer. Right, we break again. Let me just quickly mute the breakpoint again once more. And let's see if that worked. Right. So now I'm hitting the button. It creates new customers. We'll be able to sell our startup much easier with that many customers. Transaction problem is solved. Again, we thought we not just want to start with, don't just want to stop with showing you transaction metadata, but even a bit more. And maybe you have already noticed. So if I try to click that again, add random customer, let's look at the code up here. Right, now it gets really squishy with that zoom size. You can see we're trying to create a new customer here. Customer equals new customer. On the next line, we're putting it into a custom repository, and that's it. And then we thought, hey, when I step over here, we could give you information that this is not just a normal class you're instantiating, a normal object, you just instantiate it, but we know it's an entity. That's why we give the variable a nice little database sign. We say ID equals null. It's a transient entity because it hasn't been yet attached to the persistence context. And when you step over it once more, you can see now it's a managed entity. So you see at any point also in the debug tool window, hey, what does my entity now actually do in a persistence context? I mentioned the L1 context early on, L1 entity cache. You can see it's now filling up with my managed entity. And again, all that just by clicking a tiny button, the debug button. Maybe some of you have noticed there is also, we show these inline hints here on the right side. Again, hopefully you can see them at the back, where we again show you line by line in a debug session the same information. Is it a managed entity and whatnot? I personally tend to sometimes ignore these inline hints, but maybe you find them useful, and if you do, please let us know. So it's not just in the panel window down below, but also on the right side here of your debug lines. All right, let's continue. Let's see. We fixed add random customer, please. My favorite, make sure to be able to connect to the dev database spawned through Docker Compose. Now, when I go back to the project, have a look at it. What I didn't tell you earlier, we're using Spring Boot Docker Compose support, which means when we boot up the application, the support reads in the Compose YAML file. In this case, my Compose YAML file says, hey, please boot up MySQL latest, my database, my user, secret, and a port. Now I'm being smart. I know if there's just one port inside here, it actually means it's going to be a random port every time I boot up. Otherwise, I would have to put the port, in front. That's my host, my random host port. That's my random container port. Now they told me connect to my dev database, which boots up on a random port. Maybe one last time the question, where do I have to click? What do I do now? What do you guys do now? What do you folks do now on a day-to-day basis? Anyone? Any suggestions? Because I've seen anything. I mean, obviously you could hard code the port in here, right? And then it gets tricky with when you have, do you want to commit it? Do you have, 10 applications, new ports, whatever? And then my favorite, by the way, which I've also seen, so what you could do is, we've started the application, you can go to services, and you can dig down what is the real port, like 61832 down here, right? And then go open up the database tool window. Now it gets really squishy. And try to remember, hey, what was my username? What was my password? What was my database? What was the right port? You could do all of that. But then we thought, hey, again, just hit the debug button, and you're good. And what you might have noticed already is that when you hit the debug button, Again, we're trying to be smart because when your application boots up, we know the data sources of your project, and we automatically import these data sources into our database tool window. So we didn't have to do anything. What you can see here is when I go to I can see my run configuration here, Spring Debugger application, and please ignore that error. That's because I'm on a preview version of IntelliJ. And automatically, that database connection got imported. Actually, I have to show you because it was already there. So I just shut down my application, right? So it's gone now, just so you're aware. And when you boot up the application again, then you'll just see it. So no more configuration for you to do. You'll just be able to access your data sources, right? Here we go. So you don't get the wrong impression, it has nothing to do with Docker Compose support. We try to detect all data sources, not just one. So if you have 10 databases and thus 10 data sources, they will be in here. We detect all relational data sources, with the exception of H2 fully in memory, MongoDB, and it works for you when you launch your application like normally, when you do Docker Compose, when you do tests. Actually, let me just quickly show you a test use case. So we have a customer service test. The customer service test, because my colleagues like libraries, it's using test containers, so completely different to Docker Compose support. Again, we boot up a MySQL container. It just says MySQL latest. I don't have a username specified. I wouldn't know again. Hey, what's support? What's the username password? What's that new service connection annotation? Whatever. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here. I'm just going to run debug, and then magic is just going to happen. Because the only thing we have to do is wait for test containers to boot up to do its magic, right? Open up the database tool window. Let me just, here we broke inside customer service. And then we will see, right? Here's my run configuration, customer service test, create random customer. I'm simply able to access the same database that my test just booted up and that my test is using, and I don't have to worry about anything. Yeah? Just access the database, be happy. Quick, again, one temperature feeling. How do people feel about automated database importing so far? All right. Cool. Not yet, no. Right, let's see, going back to my list. Fix add random broken customer, make sure to be able to connect to a database. It looks like they also said, please also have a look at tickets, EVAN, and whatever that's crossed out. So thank you, great. So it looks like we did a good job, and that is, in terms of current scope, what I wanted to show you on the Spring Debugger plugin. But we have a ton of plans, and I just want to give you quickly first what we think we should be working on, and then complement that with something else. Cacheable, for example. You know the cacheable annotation, you can put it onto any method. We thought it would be super cool if you just could visually see what's in the cache, which objects are inside. You can remove them, you can remove all of them, just with the click of a button. Event tracing would be super nice. Anywhere you get an event, just click a button, navigate to source. Where did the event actually come from? And not having to debug it yourself. HTTP tracing, always having access to the raw HTTP request, for example, putting it into the client, into HTTP client, and so on and so forth. And then there's much rougher scoped out things like Spring Security support, where you can also visualize specifically which methods are you allowed to call, which aren't. But these features need more of your input. And that's why I wanted to complement that with, I would like all of you to dream. At the moment, we're really trying to make Spring support better in IntelliJ IDEA. So if you have something on a day-to-day basis where you think, hey, this kind of is bad, this could be so much easier, I want to have that feature, like, for example, Kafka support. Please dream about all these features. We're really trying to prioritize based on the user input, meaning you. We want to know about it, let us know, and then we will be able to reprioritize what we'll be working on. But the sky really is the limit. Anything you think was impossible, we're trying to pull it off. The feedback that you have, just send it to marco@jetbrains.com. We'll talk about it with the team. And again, as I said, it would be really super helpful if you tried out Spring Debugger yourself and let us know what you think. Which, by the way, brings me back to one important point. When I look at, let me just briefly run that test again, because I saw something when I accessed the database. Let me see if I was just imagining it. Right, so here's my database connection. Let me see inside, tables. Ah, there's a what's next table. Right, what's next table? What's next table is a download Spring Debugger plugin for you. We made it a plugin, so it's not bundled to the normal, usual IntelliJ release cycle. That means all you need to do is, when you go to IntelliJ settings, and you can do that right now essentially, you just put in Spring Debugger, right? Download it once and you're good to go. It will update itself, and then you can experience everything I've shown you. And this looks so super squished in now, but I hope you get the idea. Just go to plugins. Yeah, right, this looks better. Install Spring Debugger plugin and you're good to go. You're all set. Let's see what else we have. Questions. There's only one question which is not allowed, which is where do I have to click? Because by now you probably found out it's just the debug button. Install the plugin once and then debug and you're all good to go. Any questions? Yes, please. We'll start at the front and then just go back, okay? Not that I'm aware of. Yeah. I think right next to you, yes. So the question was, at what point is the transaction visible? So I mean, you saw we created it. I mean, there was a line where we just said new customer, and at that point, I mean, it doesn't matter where in the code it is. It will be transient unless you put repository save and attach it to the persistence context, and at that point you'll see that it's managed essentially. But it doesn't matter where it is. I mean, yeah. Yes, please. Yes, in fact, actually it is. So I haven't showed it, but there is a button, a menu item, which just can clone and persist. So it depends on how you configured, for example, your Docker Compose support, that it doesn't shut down. But then you just click clone and persist, and you can always access the database. Yes. I'm sure there was something back there, but you need to show up your hands again once more. If there was. Right. Now is the time to show. Ah, yes, please. At the moment, what would you like to customize? So the question was, how far could you customize the experience? But what? I'm not specifically, so I'm gonna say no at the moment, but also I'm not sure if I fully understand the question, so maybe we can take it afterwards and figure out what specifically, yes, you meant. Yes, please. Is there any reason you haven't bundled this with Spring, with the IntelliJ Spring plugin, or do you plan to bundle it? Again, it is. So, do we want to bundle it with the normal IntelliJ, so to speak? It's just simply for that we can iterate faster with the plugin. So it's separate. We can update it more often. Otherwise, it's going to be bundled. We are bound to the release cycles. That's the only reason. Just get faster feedback. Yes, please. Sorry, the question was, would it find every what specifically? Yeah. Any bean, it doesn't matter where the bean comes from. As soon as it's in your application context, the bean is, so to speak, screwed. We'll find it, and we'll try and trace it, and then we can offer it to you. Yes. Yes. Doesn't matter. We'll just put it there. Yeah. We'll navigate you to the right point. Do you get access to MVC? MDC. Ah, that's a good question. Not, yeah, not, yeah, not yet. So you have no MDC context, available at the moment. Yes, please. Ooh, that's also a good question. Will it work in a suspend function?
What would work what? Yes. Theoretically, yes, but still it's going to be a mess.
It's a good question. Yeah.
It didn't improve specifically like a support has.
Yes. Yes, please. It actually doesn't at the moment properly, so we're trying to put a tiny big warning sign inside where we say, hey, locally only at the moment. So for remote debugging, at the moment, you're a bit out of luck. Yeah. Right. If there are any more questions, I will be around. The team will be around. You can always approach us, hit us. Again, marco@jetbrains.com. Send us your feedback. Try it out, please. You can download it right now and maybe benefit from it straight tomorrow.
5-star the plugin.
5-star the plugin also. Yes, if you like it, please 5-star the plugin. Thank you very much. Thank you.